Anyị gbọọ mma na-ege ntị, anyị ekene unu ọzọ n'ụbọchị uhuruchi tata. Dịka unu n'anya, unu na-afụ ka o si ada. Na ya bụ ego obodo a bụ zoo, ọ na-anazikwa kwarapụ kwarapụ. Akwasa anyị na-akpọpere 42,000 miniton food reserve. Biko na-asị ka m jụọ bifo anyị tinyere unu ya ji maka ya wee bịa n'iru akwụkwọ. Onye rutego saịdị unu biko kọwara anyị bifo anyị tinyere unu ife anyị ji maka ya wee bịa. Unu fụzi na exchange ka o si wee dị 1620 zoo how far? Okay, ifu na-ada egwu. The more you hold Maazị Nnamdi Kanu, the more Nigerian economic collapse. Ọ bụla egwuregwu agbalị ya dịrọ odogwu be odogwu. Also, I will destroy Nigeria with truth. And ya bụ ife bi na-eme kịta. Ge ya bụ ife Rise News wetara anyị n'ụbọchị nke taa. Mmiri ejugo awụ ọnụ. Ka na pịbịa kwuo nnukwu. Achọrọ m ka unu ge ya bụ ife ị ga-esi ya. Ifeọma ihe mere anyị bụ itinyere kọmentị gị gbasara maka ihe ndị a niile ịnụgasị. Over to you, sir.
And the NGX Group, prominent commercial lawyer, in a helicopter crash in the United States yesterday. Very sad news. All through since yesterday, we've been talking about the life and times and how tragic this is. Then, of course, we had the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress talking about the proposed strike, the 2-week notice that the organized labor has served. One of the issues in the 16-point agreement reached in October last year that has not been met by the federal government has to do with the salaries and entitlements of university teachers. I'm sure that will interest Professor Aworawo. And then, of course, the federal government releasing grains, 102 metric tons. We had the chairman of the Nigerian Silos Concessionaires Association, who was giving us figures and saying, look, the government must go back to the basics. So these are the 3 major issues we've taken on today so far. Let me start with you, Professor Aworawo.
Yeah, it's really, really tragic, the death of the CEO of Access Holdings, young man, 57, who has made his mark in the banking industry. And of course, he's also been prominent in several other areas, most recently education, philanthropy, just name it. His death will touch thousands of people. It's really, really tragic. And to also remember that he was just on a trip, some vacationing, for vacationing to not turn to, such a tragic experience where himself, his wife, his son, and the others on the flight just perishing in that way. It's really, really tragic. It simply reminds all of us that life is fugacious, ephemerality of life, we call it. And these are things that should also remind us of the need to utilize whatever opportunity we have to contribute positively to humanity. Because at the end of the day, people fight, struggle, want to grab this, want to grab that. What will you be remembered for? It's a fundamental question, that will be asked when someone passes. The comments about him have been generally positive, which is good. There are many people that people won't have so many positive things to say about when they pass on. So it's also a time for reflecting. Incidentally, people have been referring to some comments he himself made, a couple of weeks ago, talking about learning to count our days and acquiring a heart of wisdom, and that the moment we have to breathe, to live, we should reflect on, what we do with that time, as if, a premonition that the time is near, to go. We can only pray that God grants the family the calm heart to be able to accept this. Somebody says parents are still alive, and it makes it even more, disturbing. In the African culture, parents are not supposed to bury their children. It should be the other way around. It will be really, really distressing to the parents especially. So we can only pray that God grants them mercy, calm heart to be able to, bear the loss. The second issue, which has to do with the Labour NSC planned strike. We've said this over and over again, that one of the weaknesses of this government is that it has focused on those who already have and seem to neglect those who have too little or have nothing at all. You recall the humanitarian ministry scandal, the minister suspended and all that. Those are supposed to be monies for the poorest of the poor in Nigeria that some people were trying to corner, so to speak. The government itself is not free of blame for those to whom it has made promises and nothing has happened. Of course, university teachers, it's like we worked 2022 and got nothing. I keep saying we worked. For instance, I was head of the department then. There was no day I didn't go to work for those 8 months that government is withholding the salary. I will also say time and again that the lecturer's work is not just to go and teach. Teaching is just 25-30% of what lecturers do. They do research, community service. And so to say no work, no pay cannot really apply in that strict sense to university teachers. We've said this over and over again. And we even pointed to things that we did during the strike. During my own time, we did journals, we did everything and all that. It's part of our assignment as intellectuals. So government promised to pay 4 months out of the 8. They should actually pay the 8. But even the 4 promised, nothing. The 35,000 naira that the government promised to pay, this is the 5th month. Government has only paid 2, out of all of that. This last month, federal government workers got paid on the 10th. I've been in the service for quite some time now, over 20 years. I can't recall any time that we were paid this late. Maybe second, maybe third, fourth at the very worst. So, it speaks to how government has treated workers, which is why NSC is, calling for this strike. We hope government will reflect and, do what is right so that the pains of the economic condition, with fuel, subsidy removal, and all the other things that have followed, inflation that has reached, unprecedented level, they will be able to at least cope a bit with it. We hope government will act and act decisively so that the strike can be averted. If there's a strike, it will even be worse for an already very bad economy. And this idea of government will only act when labor threatens to go on strike is very embarrassing. Very, very embarrassing, because this government is supposed to be a government of progressives. People for the military, people, the pedigree. One does not expect that we will have this many labor, problems with the government that projects itself the way this government does. So it's not too late. Government should take a step back, reflect, and do what is right so that this strike can be prevented. And this incessant industrial action that they will likely face moving forward can also be averted. We hope so, because this same government that before you knew it, some people were getting a car of 160 million naira, and people cannot get 35,000. Just look at the difference. They have argued, we need a car for our assignment. A car of 20 million can also do the same assignment in an economy like ours. It just speaks to the insensitivity of the ruling class in Nigeria. But we hope the government will listen. The government of President Tinubu is better than that of Buhari in that respect. I can say that categorically. He listens, unlike the other one that you hear nothing. You like go and jump into the lagoon, that's your business. But this one, at least the president listens, the government listens. So we hope that the government will do what is right, so that an already bad situation will not be made worse. Then finally, the grain thing. Yes, the condition is so bad. In fact, the government of Niger State is saying that food from Niger should not go to other states. That tells you the extreme, that things have, got to where we are now. Yes, release of the grain will be fine, but there was some revolution that was taking place under addition of the Minister of Agriculture a couple of years ago, which almost made, which was pushing us towards being food sufficient. What happened to it? Why does it seem that since then everybody else went to sleep? We are now in somnolence. If you release this grain comes from excess. So you need to also work to get some excess to replace it, so that if there's some need like this in future, the emergency release can come. So some very serious attention will be to our agricultural practice. They used to give them support and all that. Under Emefiele, we saw a whole lot of things back and forth and all that. Something more systematic that will make us, because we're getting, even the rice. Where is Lake Rice, for instance? Lagos and Kebbi states partnering, and we had the rice all over the place. We helped. Where is Lake Rice? It has totally disappeared to thin air. So these are initiatives that need to be revived and built on, so that we can be full sufficient. Bringing grain from the day is good, but it's only for emergency. It's not going to be for a permanent thing. So let's get all these things coordinated, so that we can address a lot of these problems from a more holistic point of view.
Okay, Professor Kila.
Well, in the same order, I mean, the tragic loss of Habatik is a very sad, it's a very sad event, because he's somebody who has achieved a lot and was promising to achieve more. On a personal note, I've met the wife several times. I knew him personally, and I also knew Bimbo Ogunbanjo personally. So it's a very personal loss. Amazingly, I was actually with Ogunbanjo just last week Sunday at the Igbobi College function. So, and we did discuss. It's a very sad thing, you know, and as has been said, it teaches the rest of us to know that nobody knows when the time will come, and we should lead a good life, and perhaps remind other people to lead a good life so that we don't have to lie when you die, because eventually we will die. So it is good to actually live a life of principle, achievement, and focus, and where possible to be kind, besides being visionary, so that others will not lie about you. And there's a new word coming. I want to warn everybody, especially leaders and public figures, that whilst, you know, for the past 300 years or so, it was accepted that when people die, you don't say any bad thing about them. Now people will say bad things about you if you die. You know, it's changing. So one should not accept that inviolability of the dead anymore. And, you know, our thoughts and prayers to the family, both the corporate family and the biological family and the community family, which Igwe has cultivated, and to Ogunbanjos as well. The Nigerian situation. So the labor, one thing needs to be said, some general consideration. Things are very tough in the country. That is a premise that everybody should understand, both for people and for government. We need to understand that we're in that situation. We must understand that somehow labor needs to be seen to be doing something. That is a duty they have, because if they don't do that, they will lose their relevance and importance. And I say relevance and importance not in a propagandistic way. It is almost as if they keep quiet, their essence will not be justified. I have seen people throw barbs at me, you know, who am I? Saying that you seem to be keeping quiet on this government, but you are always talking about the government. So that tells you how people are feeling about matters, you know, to say that you are protesting against Jonathan when he increased petrol from this level to that level, and this one you're not saying anything. It tells you how people feel, and it is important. I can say I don't care what people say, but Labour cannot do that. So they have to be seen to be doing something. In doing that, and we go to where I started from, somehow we must understand that the country is in a bad place. There seems to be no money. There seems to be lack of a lot of things. So somehow, the rational thing to do, whilst we understand our subjective and personal duties, is to find a way to have a conciliatory look at things, to see how we can all get out of it, knowing that we're in trouble. I do believe that the government, for example, has good intention, but somehow they're not able to bring out good output. You know, they're like people who want to feed it, but they don't know how to cook. There's like, given that we're near Valentine's Day, the government of Nigeria seems to be somebody who loves but does not know how to love. I think there's some subtle contradiction there that hopefully they will get some more competence and a better look at things to be able to solve it. That is, and the proof of that is the fact that Comrade Ajero can sit at an interview, which was a tough interview he did with you, but he could point out that, what was his expression he used? No action. He could actually say, they made promises, but they've not fulfilled their promises. They've done things, but we've not seen the result of what they've done. I want to warn those in government, those in the presidency around them, that that is a very dangerous thing for government. It is a very dangerous thing that government should say something and not do it. That is worse than revolution. It is worse than chaos, because the essence of government, before infrastructure, before security, is certainty. When a government says something, it should do it. A government that does not do that risk not being thrown away by revolution or coup, but actually risk some kind of defibrillation in which it loses its own authority to command. There is an issue that you mentioned, which is integrity of labor. And I think labor should take that very seriously. Comrade Ajero can say today that no government has given him 20 naira or 10 naira, nor lodged him in any hotel, but can he put his hand on fire for all his predecessors, especially some of them who have turned to politicians today? That is the kind of thing that we need to deal with. And to get it right, everybody needs to play their part in terms of vision, philosophy, and principle and sacrifice. That is very crucial, because leadership is about certainty and integrity. If any kind of leadership, be it government or civil society, loses those things, there's a risk that they will not be able to function. I think that whilst we understand the need for labor to show their stance, the onus is also mainly on government, but I think also on labor, to understand that this is a tough situation. A strike will not benefit anybody. But the government should not the government should not exploit that kind of thing. Professor Aworawo was very right when he pointed out that it's a sad thing that until people bang their fist on the table, until they threaten to strike or go on strike or go to protest, government does not seem to respond. That's a very bad thing. We need to find a way to respond without threatening each other, so that we can have a civic and civil conversation. It's a very crucial thing. In terms of the distribution of grain, which is a response to the food emergency, yes, it is a good thing that the government is reacting to the cry of the people. There's no doubt there's a good thing about that. But I have a problem with the kind of response they're giving. This kind of response is a desperate response. I have a problem with it for two reasons, and they're both procedural reasons. Number one is that we need not get to where we are today before we realize that we have a crisis at hand. Some of us have been saying it, a lot of my colleagues, economists, have been saying this thing. We saw it coming. This is the chronicle of a pre-announced trouble, and we could have dealt with it and averted it months ago before we got here. Now that we're here, whilst it is understandable that the people are hungry, give them food method, which seems direct, it is not just pedestrian, but it's actually sad. I mean, you give grains to people at war. Maybe where we are is as if we're war. I mean, what's this idea of government is giving out food? I think it's normal for us, because I have seen food banks in Lagos now, which is something that was the first day I saw it, I actually parked to go and look at it to make sure I saw right. Those are very sad things that we should not normalize. Those are abnormal things. And I think whilst people are needy, somehow we need to philosophically and in terms of institution know that philanthropy is not a way of life. And this is where I go to the second point, which does not convince me about the way the government is acting. There's a tendency for government to act like philanthropists rather than government. This idea of giving out palliative, giving out grain, giving out money, is somehow we need to understand that the job of government is not to give out, is to make things happen. And until we embrace that principle, we're going to be in trouble. So, President Aworawo is wrong when he says that the government seems not to be taking care of the poor. He that does not remember the poor. The government remembers the poor. The problem is making them poorer by taking from them. So we have a government who, in the name of the poor, is a lot of the things that the government is doing is done in the name of the poor and the very poor. The problem that is the result is making them poorer than they were, because now the rich is taken from the poor to become richer and the poor are getting poorer. I think that needs to change if we really want to get things right.
Okay, talking about the poor, let's take this next topic. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and the Distillers and Blenders Association of Nigeria have warned that business investment worth over 800 billion naira may be lost if the ban placed on alcoholic beverages in sachets and PET bottles not less than 200 milliliters by the National Agency for Food and Drug and Administration Control, NAFDAC, is allowed to stay. The two industry stakeholder groups made their positions on the matter known the past week. In order to avert what they called impending colossal loss on investment in machines, raw materials, and financial resources, they have called on President Bola Tinubu to prevail on the NAFDAC Director General, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, to reverse the ban. They also urged the President to save 5.5 million direct and indirect persons currently earning their livelihood from the business. While they argued that they are not in any way fighting NAFDAC, they noted that they needed to reach a common ground which will address both the health of the underage and that of the business concerns in the wine and spirit sector. Well, okay, this is what we have before us. But the position of Professor Mojisola Adeyeye is that, look, this decision was reached long time ago, since as far back as 2018. And it included NAFDAC, stakeholders, within the industry, these same, producers of alcoholic beverages in sachet and all of that. And the agreement was reached that by the beginning of 2022, there will be a 5% reduction. And that over time, up till 2024, they will stop production. So it was meant to be a gradual process. What NAFDAC has now done is to begin the enforcement, and they are already doing so in some states of the Federation, which will include destruction of products and also the sealing off of factories where these sachet alcoholic drinks are produced. Now, what is the key argument that this decision was based upon? That the WHO has advised that there are about 200 health issues that are related to alcohol consumption. And that, indiscriminate consumption of alcohol, particularly at motor parks and elsewhere, and by underage persons, that these are things that the government can no longer allow. And an agreement having been reached as far back as 2022, and enough time given, NAFDAC says now is holding the big stick. So is NAFDAC acting as a moral police? Is the businesses, the investors, are they right to say that investment over 800 billion will be lost, and that people, over 5.5 million people, will be put out of jobs? If alcohol consumption is the issue, are there other methods that could have been adopted? What are the best practices elsewhere? Let me start with you, Professor Kila, on this.
When I first got the news, my instinct was, I heard the person say they don't want to fight NAFDAC. My first instinct was, no, they must fight NAFDAC. But then I held myself back because I don't want people to think it's because I'm an alcoholic that I'm so much in defense of this alcohol matter. But then I got to read, and then the point you made came out. I think in terms of where we are, we need to have a holistic approach about what we're dealing with in the country. And I think this is the wrong time to ban any kind of economic activity. I'm not even sure it's the right time to ban prostitution or anything. For now, anything that yields money, that creates jobs, should be allowed to flow. I think we should tell ourselves that, to know that, look, there's no point trying to be moral or saving some health issues that can lead to debt. Unemployment, hunger, starvation is also bad for our health. What has WHO said about that? Lack of light is bad for our health. What is the directive they're giving us? Bad roads is bad for our health. It can kill people. Actually, that's killed people. I mean, what have they done about that? So I think NAFDAC and the rest of the government needs to understand that it is not enough to be right. One has to be right at the right time. Timing is also very important. So this is not the time to ban any economic activity. But I also think the leadership of man, they need to look at themselves seriously, because if they entered an agreement, they should respect it. They shouldn't have entered, I believe that they shouldn't have entered that kind of agreement. But since they've entered, they should respect it. I think for now, what we should just give to them is some kind of rule of exceptionalism to let them take advantage of the current situation. And now this is my own sort of personal liberal worldview. But I do not believe in banning. I believe in persuasion. This idea of saying that you ban a product and people will stop consuming it, I think is wrong. What we should do is to educate people not to consume it in the wrong way, because the state, I don't think, has a moral authority to tell anybody not to consume anything unless it's pure poison, and if it's that, it will not be consumed, because it is not illegal. The idea of saying, they're not saying we're banning alcohol, they're saying we're banning the dosage of alcohol. So they want to use economic and financial means to persuade people, but rather than persuade, they're coercing. Elsewhere, what they do, which I do not agree with, is fiscal measure. They put tax on it, on tobacco and alcohol, to dissuade people from consuming it. Even with that, I do not agree, but that's my own very personal thing. I think it's the schools, the churches, and the mosque and other places of worship, and the family, that should let people know that life can be better with alcohol, if it can be. Sometimes one has doubt.
Professor Aworawo?
Yeah, I agree with Professor Kila that man made a mistake to have entered into the agreement in 2018. It was a mistake. If you ask me personally, at an ethical level, I would say, well, I'm a grassroots person.
Yeah.
Where I see people in the parks in the morning, they are drinking this thing, throwing the sachet anywhere they can throw it and all that. I don't think it's so neat, but the question you ask is, tobacco, that's cigarettes, and this sachet drink, which one is worse for people's
health?
And why hasn't NAFDAC,
or
even the whole world, even WHO, why haven't they, why does the tobacco industry still exist? So my argument is at the comparative, this thing. If tobacco industries can still flourish, despite the fact that the people are told that those who smoke it are liable to die young, I don't think NAFDAC has any business banning sachet drink. In my office, I have a lot of it. I have NSA, I have a blue label, red label.
In your office?
Yes, that people give to me. I hardly drink, so they are there. Now, the point I'm making is that those who have it in bottles, is it not the same content? Why the target? A young person can also drink the one in bottle. If a young person gets it, a 13-year-old can drink it if he has access to it. Why target that one in sachet?
Oh no, but there's a point to Prof. It's affordability. What they say is this: because that is very affordable, it opens the market to many more people. Whereas the bottle, the blue label bottle, and the other bottles you have, they need to save a lot more to get to that. So because of that, it is argued that they can dissuade them. That's a price question in this case, but it's actually called price persuasion.
Honestly, I think everything is wrong about it, especially when you compare alcohol to tobacco.
Yes,
and other things that practically destroy your life. It doesn't make sense. How they demand? What did they agree that? Look, just like you have said, the best way is persuasion. Whereas the National Security Agency and all the rest this thing, if you become an alcoholic, your life will be destroyed. Just like they tell people who take tobacco that it is dangerous for you, but of course people still take it. They say, some people say that something must kill man, but they use that philosophy and they go ahead.
But in fairness, the thing in tobacco, the smokers have actually reduced generally compared to how people were smoking before.
Maybe they should follow that too.
They should follow. That's the point. That's what they should follow.
You can't treat it. Is it because poor people are the ones that take it?
Yes, that's
it
the thing.
It goes back again to the vulnerable.
To the voiceless.
Let's take a foreign subject before we close with football. Senegal. We treated the subject here last week, but there have been developments in that country. Protesters have now clashed with the police in Dakar after President Macky Sall announced the indefinite postponement of the presidential election set for February the 25th. Sall cited a dispute between the National Assembly and the Constitutional Court over rejected candidates as the reason for the delay. Opposition leaders denounced the decision and hundreds of protesters took to the streets Sunday. International entities, including the European Union, the United States, and France, called for a prompt, transparent, and credible election. As we pointed out last week, President Macky Sall's tenure expires on April 2. What he has now done, which is clearly a constitutional coup against the people of Senegal, one of the most stable democracies in Africa. Since independence, Senegal has not had a coup. Now Macky Sall has imposed a coup on the people of Senegal. One, he could not get the third term that he wanted, and now he has that third term through the back door. Because the parliament, with security agents of the state clamping down on the opposition, has now gone ahead to fix a new date for December 2024, which will amount to an 8-month extension for President Macky Sall. And now the Sahel coalition of Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, they are laughing at ECOWAS. They are saying, okay, let us see ECOWAS now impose sanctions on Senegal, although ECOWAS has already issued a statement condemning latest developments. But the fear is the big uncertainty, in Senegal, which could derail perhaps Africa's most stable democracy as we know it. Professor Aworawo, I'll start with you.
What is happening in Senegal is very, very disturbing. Macky Sall, the parliament, the political class in Senegal are a disgrace to Africa, a disgrace to democracy. Macky Sall wanted a third term, and then after the pressure and all that, he withdrew. There were even statements issued, even Nigeria issued a statement then, commending him for dropping the third term agenda. Only for him not to. What is his problem? What is the problem of Africa's political class? ECOWAS must act. This is a time for ECOWAS to show example that it is not only when the military take, plus a coup that they will make noise. It's not just about issuing statements. ECOWAS must take a position firmly, must act against Macky Sall, must sanction Senegal under Macky Sall, so that it will be clear that ECOWAS is not hypocritical in its commitment to democracy and democratic ideas, just as is provided for in, of course, various documents and even the revised treaty, of the body. It is so disturbing.
Well, Professor Kila?
Well, I think really this situation, well, let's start from the Sahel group mocking ECOWAS. I think they have a reason to mock ECOWAS, really, because this is just this is something played for them to mock ECOWAS. But I think the best way for ECOWAS to react is to show that they're not mockable, if truly they're not mockable, because they might just be mockable as a matter of fact. ECOWAS need to, beyond condemning in words, they need to sit down in the room or get some people to sit for them, the likes of Professor Aworawo and other dons of international relations, to go and develop the concept of active stakeholdership on democracy. That, I think, is a philosophy that ECOWAS need to develop in theory and then put into practice. The idea that we, members of ECOWAS, we are a democratic institution, we defend democracy, and we shall therefore, at all time, stand up for democracy and stand up for anything that goes against democracy. Going against anything that stands against democracy will make them be able to go against democracy, our constitutional coup, any attempt to gag human rights. And I think until ECOWAS does that, it's going to simply become a partial selective paper tiger.
Okay, as we begin to wrap up, let's talk football. After almost 1 month of spectacular continental football, the curtains will be drawn later tonight on the 34th African Cup of Nations in Ivory Coast. The showpiece final game of the competition will be between host national team, the Elephants of Ivory Coast, and the Super Eagles of Nigeria. While this is an opportunity for the Ivorians to win the trophy for a third time, Nigeria will be gunning for a fourth African title. To qualify for the final, Nigeria overcame South Africa 4-2 on penalties, while Ivory Coast booked their place by beating Democratic Republic of Congo 1-0 in the semi-finals. Wow, the big match this evening. Everyone who has been on this program has been patriotic, saying that the Super Eagles must win. And some have made predictions, like Ahaniku, who said 1-0. Any predictions here? Any cause for optimism? Should we start the jubilation with another part of the story. Is that in Lagos State, the Lagos State government has had to issue a medical advisory because when we played the semi-finals, 5 persons died out of shock when a penalty was awarded against Nigeria. So the Lagos State government is now saying, look, if you have high blood pressure or diabetes, take your medication before the game, before you go and sit down there. Nobody should get overexcited. In other words, people, you know, the Ministry of Health of Lagos State says people should take basic precautions. If you know your heart is a bit weak, don't go and watch football. Let me start with you, Professor Aworawo.
Let me begin with the match itself. Yes, Nigeria has cause to be optimistic. When you look at how both sides have, got to where they are now, Nigeria has a slight edge, but that edge is within the margin of error. So either side could win the match tonight, but Nigeria does have a slight edge, and that gives us, reason for optimism. It's been spectacular all through, since it started. The teams can match just any team anywhere in the world. The standard is so very high now. And officiating has not been horrible, even though we've had errors here and there, but it's not too different from what we see elsewhere. We also pray and hope that there will be fair officiating tonight because Côte d'Ivoire is the host. Let us not see anything that would give the impression that the referee is pandering to either the crowd, or the host country, as the case may be. But it's going to be spectacular tonight, and Nigerians have cause to be optimistic because we have a slight edge over Côte d'Ivoire when we look at how we have arrived at where we are. Then the other issue of people who died in the course of the semi-final, so sad that people had to die. Those who have heart issues, it is not even just a case of going to take medication before the match. They shouldn't watch the match. It's just a game. I go to stadia to watch football. It's just a game. It is true there is passion in it, but it shouldn't get to the point where someone dies. So if somebody has a heart attack, somebody is too emotional about all of them, just don't watch the match. Once in a while, go and check the update, check the result, who is leading, and go and rest. When the match comes to an end, you will know because there will be uproar everywhere, and then you go and you just keep. Life is too expensive. Life is too precious to lose for just watching a soccer match. So if you have a heart issue, don't take your medication and don't watch. I saw a picture of somebody who covered the TV. I only left one part. I was looking. It's even worse. That is even worse. Don't watch. Your life is too precious for just a soccer game. That is my advice for those who you know you have a heart problem. Don't watch. Check the updates once in a while. In an hour and a half, 2 hours maximum, the match will be over. You see the result. If Nigeria wins, you jubilate. If it goes the other way, well, melancholy for some time, and you'll be fine from tomorrow. Those are just my comments to those.
The Lagos State government says, know your limits. Yeah. Drink a lot of water. Stay hydrated and nourished. Take breaks. Stay calm and relaxed. These are some of the recommendations given by, and then prepare for emergencies. People should just prepare for emergencies.
Don't drink water, take all those things, but don't watch if you know you are too emotional.
Otherwise, another thing they could do is to speak to some teams. I won't mention names who are used to losing in the Premier League.
No, that's Arsenal.
You say
Arsenal fans don't have that attack.
Exactly. So they are used to it. They can learn from Arsenal fans on how to deal with this kind of thing. I'm very impressed and taught by the alacrity with which the Lagos State government has issued this health thing. It shows they're responsive, and I think it's something worthy of note. History will be kind to them on that they took note of this. But it tells you how passionate we are about football, but it also tells you there's an underlying malice in the country, because it is not the first time that we've gone to the final, play semi-final. I think it's the first time in history, unless this is the first time it's been recorded, where people would die so much. I watched a semi-final with a group of friends, and actually some of them were so tense they had to get up from watching it, but I guess they followed Professor Aworawo's idea. They walked away at some point when they were playing the penalties because they became so tense. So that is something we need to bear in mind. Kudos to Lagos State. Nigerians are passionate about football. And so, what I wanted to say, whilst politicians and others are talking about trying to make Nigerians patriotic, I think it will be clear to people that what these footballers are able to do for us is that they show us by their sweat and their conduct that they're working for Nigerians, and Nigerians rally around them easily. So when people come with other kind of stories, long stories about Nigerians not being patriotic, they should look at what the Eagles can do. Clear, transparent, sweating, common goal, unite Nigerians. And Nigerians are very easy to please, contrary to what politicians make us believe. I'd like to pay a special tribute to Victor Osimhen, who, for me, whatever happens, is the most valuable player in this competition. A man who can go solo, but worked hard for the team. Is consistent, creative, contributing at all time. That is the kind of spirit we need even in our leadership. I have said in other forums that every organization, every team, even every couple will do better if they have an Osimhen inside them. And I think it's a lesson we can take from the pitch to our lives of what that young man is doing there. I wish Nigeria well. I can't predict. I can only wish. I wish we win. Nigerians have a sense of entitlement in winning. Let everybody know that it is 50-50 chance. Nobody will die if anything happens. But let's enjoy the game and wish our boys the best.
Well, you've praised Victor Osimhen. Some people will add to that Stanley Nwabali, the goalkeeper.
The goalkeeper, yes.
And you yourself mentioned earlier on, was it the defense you talked about?
Yeah, I said, yes. My position on the defense, our best part is the defense. We're weak in the midfield, and our attack is not very solid. It's individual talents are there, but our forte.
And in that defense, you have Stanley Nwabali.
We have Stanley Nwabali, who has
done both family and country.
Yes, indeed.
Proud.
Yes, indeed.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Anthony Kila and Professor David Aworawo. This is where we draw the curtain on the program today.
And by Dalolin no Kunisi, when I saw like Neme, Nirakuko, Eastern News 24, and no go no Gabi Festival, but away Koro. As I know, see me again, Yakoro 1 day. One of the Biafran Prime Minister Kuali in the coast, ready. The Kiki Gabi Fandam Nigeria, Kiniki Kiku, Bastama Kinda Nine, or Tagasiaka teacher, Ninakuko, Bastamaka some questions, Sana Jaya. And Bastamaka goes where Zakwane and Kowasian and the mother, no man's Nanekano leader of indigenous people of Biafra. So give you the king Bastamaka Bife, drop Araya on the commission below. Also the key Biabuchitania Eastern.